Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Michael Scarpati. Michael, thank you so much for being here today.
Aaron, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about this conversation. We just did a little, we were thrown around a little bit before. We will not discuss, which we haven't yet discussed. We're just going to roll right past this because you told me where you're from. We're not going to discuss football. We're just going to go and move along into Keep Hustling. What do you say about that?
That's probably fair given what happened last week.
Well, you know what? Listen, I'm a Jet fan. So whatever happened, whatever you think. He's from Philly, people. So whatever you think is going on in your life, no. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
But really, thank you for being here.
Of course.
I want to ask you, before we get into what you're doing now, you believe that financial freedom, and I want to talk about that, access to the advice, the services that can lead a person to financial freedom or to the right financial mindset and framework can be accessed by anyone, to anyone, should be accessible to anyone.
Yes.
Where does that come from? Take us back. I didn't ask you this before we went live because I wanted to wait till we were live. Something tells me that there's more than what's on this bio that's behind your life that led you to want to pursue this mission over others.
Yeah. I mean, how deep do we want to go?
That's what this is about. This is about open and honest conversations.
Well, if we start from the beginning, it's definitely, for me, that this goes all the way back to childhood, how I was raised. And the two different financial styles that I grew up witnessing. So I come from a family that my parents split when I was pretty young. My mom came from a very hard-nosed banking family, like a rags to riches. My grandfather started as the janitor at this bank and worked his way up to become the CEO, chairman of the board, expanded the bank up in northwestern PA in the Erie, Pennsylvania area. Community National Bank. And that instilled some very financially conscious principles in my mom, like super account for every penny, be frugal, a lot of different principles that come from kind of that banking mentality, save, don't waste money. And it's a very conservative financial approach, and it's a way to operate. It can also be a little untethered or too tethered, like unfreeing, like
restrictive.
Yeah, it's just it's a real clenched way to live, but it is a way to be like super conscious of what's going on with the money, and like really, I was kind of taught at a very young age to pay attention to the money, and how do we spend it, and how do we save it as a family. On the other side of that coin, I grew up in two different households. On the other side of that coin, father's an entrepreneur. He's in the comedy business, hypnotherapy business. He's been what was one of the leaders in comedy, live comedy in the Philadelphia tri-state area in the 80s and 90s, 15 or so comedy clubs. But like he was a spender, right? Like in that entrepreneurial mentality, a lot of times it's like every dollar is the investment into the next thing for my business or for myself or for my life. And so seeing those two different perspectives just had me very curious and very interested about finances and how that can kind of impact you, the different paths you can take with money, and ultimately taught me kind of a lot of just lessons related to how there's a lot of different ways to approach this. So that kind of like sparked the interest. That entrepreneurial spirit was there just from both sides of the family, but also that financial consciousness component. And then as I got into the financial services industry, I started as an independent fiduciary financial planner. So I was in this independent lane where you're not tied to an institution. The big thing a lot of people don't realize is that most of the financial professionals, licensed financial professionals out there, do not actually work for you. About 85 to 90% of the professionals out there work for an institution, not for you.
I'm fist bumping right now for those not watching.
Yeah. And so as a result, coming from the independent lane was a very, very different perspective. when you're an institutional financial professional and you represent a company that is in the business of investing clients' money in specific products and services, it taints the approach a lot, and it just limits how you can actually really map things out for your own financial future and creating that financial freedom. And I got to kind of witness this from the completely independent, fully open architectured lens of these independent certified financial planners who I got to train under. I mean, you're talking complex strategies and systems that they were building for these households. And it was just so dramatically different than what people had ever seen. And that kind of gave me the little bit of the spark for, all right, this is something really different. And everybody deserves access to this different perspective and this different way to approach things. But most people are kind of in this limited sandbox. And that's how Retire US ultimately was born.
There's so much to unpack there. So I'm gonna take this in a progression.
Sure.
But I do want to say, obviously, I'm tilted towards any sort of independent advice because I'm an independent property casualty insurance agent.
Hey,
I will say, and we're going to get in, I think we should get into that, but
yeah,
you're right. I think that at the very least, just starting from the end, and then we'll kind of, I want to unpack a lot there. At least I feel that at least everybody should know that there are two paths, right? That you can't, that there are, and by the way, there might be advantages to large institutions, like you get a suite at the Jet game, and that might be your thing. And if you're happy with their investment strategy and it's a multi, billion-dollar conglomerate, that might be your thing. As long as people understand that that's the decision that they're making versus another option.
Yeah.
Where I think that a lot of times advertising dollars and the way it's always been done or the way they thought it was going to get done taints their ability to get to independence. But I want to ask you a question, because we're going to get to this line in your bio that I love, which is that anyone can build a clear path to financial freedom. Going back to your parents, they lived two very different lives. Would you say that either one of them were financially free?
It's such an interesting question, and I get why you're asking it, because on paper, one would say my mom was much more financially free. In spirit, you'd say my dad was. And so it's a really interesting. I'm so grateful for the perspective that I got to see these two completely different approaches to money, because it helped me shape what I would like to see, called more of like a middle balanced path between the two. And financial freedom is what you define it to me.
It's so crazy you say that, because I grew up in a house with parents who were very, very financially conservative. My siblings and I are somewhat similar. I don't think I've actually even mentioned on the podcast. So my father, he should rest in peace, literally came from nothing. His sister also came from nothing. They grew up in a house of literally nothing. He lost his mother at a very young age, and he was completely self-made. The most conservative person you ever met in your life. Like, debt was the devil. I'd rather lose multiple toes, than have a mortgage or those kind of things. Remember, we convinced them at the end that later in life to get a car lease, which is like, and it wasn't like it wasn't like a super luxury. It was like, what do you mean I'm going to pay $300 a month and that's technical debt, Right. Although, and he didn't view credit card debt as credit card debt because he paid it in full. But my point is, like, debt was the little devil. The funny part, and I've never spoken about her on this podcast, I don't know why, is my father, I have an aunt. She used to live in Buell, my father's older sister, literally the polar opposite. Grew up also with nothing, made something of herself, went to law school, put herself through law school, did the whole thing, had a law practice, basically could never retire. She's now 90 and is retired, but basically worked till the end because she loves spending the money that she earned. Now, that doesn't mean that she was like running around, in desperate need of handouts. It wasn't like that, but she used to go to Atlantic City all the time. Yeah. All the time. And like her jam was gambling. And the only time she went on a vacation was if the casinos paid for it. And no retirement, no investments, just like enjoy it in Atlantic City. Now, obviously, there's probably a happy medium between the two. But the irony is that at the end of my father's life, he would always say, he would joke with us when he was the best at spoiling his grandchildren, like the absolute best. And he was like, I'm not leaving it for you guys. I'd rather spoil them. So it's just funny how, like, obviously that's not, buying your grandkid a crazy Lego set when you have the financial means to do so is not fiscally irresponsible. But it's just ironic that sometimes you look back and you say, the people like my father, your mother, right? Maybe there was like a little bit of freedom that they could have had. Maybe they could have made that splurge.
Yeah.
Maybe at a certain point, right? Not when you're young, you know what I'm saying? But like that mentality sometimes you look at that free-spirited entrepreneur and you're like, wow, that, like, look what they're doing. It's crazy. But you don't realize the stresses that they have versus the other person that says, I'm happy just to be there. So
Yeah, it's all
that's what I wanted to
relative,
know.
right? It's all relative. And the interesting thing is, so my mom is since now retired, and she's in her 70s, and it's time to start actually spending the money. And of course, I help support her with the planning of those investments and assets. And I'll tell you what, it's been a battle for me to get this money is coming every year, whether you spend it or not. So just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. And like that, it's a mentality shift, right? It's a big, big mentality shift because she's not
like, order it in, or it's snowing. Just like pay the $2 for delivery.
You can do it.
It's not going to, and then you're like, and that's not going to make you a millennial that doesn't know how to care for their money.
Right.
like the lightning is not going to strike. I love that. What do you feel is the biggest misconception that people have about obtaining that financial freedom when they start planning? Or you wish you could just like bang everyone on the head and say?
I think most people don't know what financial freedom means to them. So that's the crux of all the problems that we have is we've gotten so used to right now the way society works. Human beings are just very accustomed to being financially lost and financially stressed, and it's become something that we're almost apathetic to. So there's this unconsciousness that does just exist in most of us that we don't even really truly know what we want from our money in terms of the bigger picture and what that even means for the now. And I think that that's the biggest misconception is that it's all relative. It's what's important to you. Like how I define financial freedom may be different than how you define financial freedom. I define financial freedom as having enough money set up for yourself so that you don't necessarily need to work in order to live, right? That
at what point though?
At whatever point you determine. I mean, it's ultimately all roads lead to retirement, in my opinion, right? So like really what we're planning for is what is that retirement ultimately going to look like? And am I now working because it's something I enjoy and it's a passion for me and it's something that I'm doing part-time? Or like most of us are working right now because we have to. If we stop working, the mortgage doesn't get paid, the rent doesn't get paid, we're out on our ass. And that's the driving force behind the work. There's also other forces most of the time, hopefully, that there's passion, you get enjoyment out of it, you get benefit, there's fulfillment and some sort of impact that you're making with that work, sure. But at the end of the day, to me, financial freedom means I get to choose to go earn, right? I get to choose to earn because my money has been set up in a way that I'm completely free. I'm autonomous and I do not actually have to go hunting for like that next paycheck. I have my money systematically positioned in a way that it's a little machine and that is going to sustain me for the rest of my life, right? And like that's how I define it. Many people may define it very differently. It may be working, it may have nothing to do with work. It just may mean the work that you have is so abundant in income that you can literally do whatever you want, whenever you want. You never plan on stopping because you love it so much, and that can be financial freedom too. So it's all relative, and I think that's the big thing. But most people never really sat down and thought through what does it actually mean to me, and what am I working towards?
I want to give you two ages.
Okay.
70 at the end. I'm going to call it the end of the story.
Yep.
And 30 at the beginning.
Okay.
Do you believe that every 30-year-old can be financially free when they're 70?
Absolutely. Especially if they are starting to do something about it now.
That's my question. Meaning the person who, and again, we could probably get to 35, that'll probably, or even 40. It's never too late to start. But ultimately, assuming a person can work and earn a living, I'm going to use that in a broad term, work and earn a living, and they plan and they stick to the plan. Circumstances, upbringing, demographic, geographic, you're saying, and I agree with you, by the way, then there's a lot about what Keep Hustling is about. None of that ultimately matters in the end. It might matter how quickly you get there, how easy it is to get there, what the plan looks like. But if a person can work solid for 40 years and follow a plan during those 40, at the end, they should be able to see some sort of financial freedom. Is that what you're saying?
1,000%. And I'll give you some data to back up that argument. If you save $500 a month starting at age 30 versus starting at age 40, by the time you're 65 years old, you'll have an extra $500,000. That's the power of starting earlier. right? So that 10-year period, just $500 a month. If you started at 30 years old versus if you started at 40 years old, you'll end up with a $500,000 more in the bank, right? That's not just total, right? More than you would if you started at 40 because of the power of compounding interest. So I believe that we live in a world like your mindset is going to be the biggest thing that dictates your success at the end of the day. If you don't think that you can be financially free, you're right. If you do, you're also right. And that will shape the opportunities that you see in the world, right? That keep hustling, like that's a perspective on life, right? That there is no shortage. It's an abundance mindset. If you're going to keep hustling, it's because you have belief that you can make something through your actions and through your efforts. And if you have a little bit of structure, right? You're not just blindly hustling, right? You're hustling with some sort of structure and strategy. You can absolutely allow time to just be your biggest asset because you're saving, because your money's growing, it's compounding. And that momentum is one of the biggest assets for the younger generation.
Okay, I have two other very important questions, and we'll see how many more come of this. What is the biggest mistake that people make financially other than not starting a plan? So obviously, premise of this conversation, everybody should start a plan. But you see the data, you look at thousands of people and data points and things like that. What is the single greatest financial mistake that people make that makes it the most difficult to recover and achieve freedom? In your opinion, by the way.
Yeah, two things come to mind, really. The first is not being consciously aware of our financial habits. Habits are going to make us and habits are going to break us. And it's very easy in today's world. We live in a very, very, very easy society to waste money. It's just the reality. The Starbucks that you get every day or whatever, that's not going to kill you. But that's like one little piece of a much bigger financial habits puzzle, more than likely, that is either taking you further away from your goals financially or could be taking you closer to those goals. And I don't think people are conscious at all of their spending. And it comes down to the root cause of most people have kind of lost the value of money in a big way. Like we don't value it, I think, in the way that we used to because things have just gone up in price. We've gotten again like so apathetic and like so powerless to this inflation that we've been experiencing. And it's just like, all right, like this is just the way it is. Things are expensive, never going to be able to save. And a lot of that can be solved by taking a little bit of a harder look at the habits. So habits, I think, like not paying attention to them and calling it fate, right? There's like a quote that I'll probably butcher, but it's until we're conscious of the unconscious, like life's going to go on and we're just going to call it fate. And it's really just us, right? It's us that's creating our reality. It's just a matter of are we conscious of it or not, right? Are we just unconsciously moving through life? So that's a big piece. The other side is people don't know what they need to have saved. In order to walk away from work, there is a magic number based off of your lifestyle, based off of inflation, based off of taxes.
Well, it's not magic. I don't think it's magic.
It's not
I'm
magic,
actually going to correct you on that. It's not magic. There is a real number. There is an actual. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an actual number.
It's a real number.
That's what I think. I want to push on both of them. I think the first is that people think it's a magic number or that it's magic, but it's not.
No, it's real. It's
real. It's not magic. People and I know obviously you didn't mean that as a magic, but I think that's the point. People think that it's magic, but it's not. It's really like this is the number. If you want to get there, first you have to know where you're going, and then hard stop. This is the end. This is the goal. This is the wall. This is the door you're going to open. In order to get to this door, this is what you have to do to get there. I have another question for you about your first point.
Real quick on that. Just to close that chapter 2. That's the interesting thing. What you said is most people though that work with a financial professional because they're working with the institutional portfolio managers, investment managers. That number is actually rarely very clear. Because the professional is not focused on that number. They're focused on growing your portfolio based according to some sort of a risk tolerance that you've told them that you're willing to accept. But that's very rarely, from my experience, 15 years in the industry, based around a specific end goal, right? Like that's actually not what those portfolios and those investments are generally based around. I can tell you like countless conversations that I've had in 15 years in this industry of people that have worked with financial professionals for years. They have portfolio managers and they do not know the answer to that one simple question, which is, well, how much do you need to have to step away confidently for retirement and not have to run the risk of going back to work or running out of money? And most people don't know the answer.
But that's my point. It becomes magic, even though it's not magic. That's my point, right?
Exactly.
It's this magic, fictitious thing that's moving, and what do you mean? All of a sudden, really, it would be nice if you could have a second home. When we started this conversation 20 years ago, that wasn't obviously. Again, you could change with it, but it's not magic. And by the way, I think that the thing about the spending is really shocking to me. A lot of people talk about the accessibility to debt. There's this now like pay over time thing, which is going to totally mess people over. That at checkout you could choose to pay over time and you're just going to end up leveraging yourself into debt. But I think more than that, I have no data to back this up, but I'll just say that I think that with currency becoming digital, it has much less value to the average person.
Yeah.
When you held the coin, like tapping is a mindless exercise. And then it's just like, it's in oblivion, whether it's a credit card or a debit card. Like it's here, it's on this thing and you just tap it and something takes care of it. I feel like in the old days when people had to like literally sit down and like hold it and touch it and get it and give it, it had much more meaning.
I agree. Yeah, there's something about the tangibility, like that physical connection with it that makes it more real. It just feels like funny money when it's all digital. It's like it's definitely true. I agree with that a lot.
What is the most shocking thing you've heard from or seen a person do financially in your career? This is the only question I've written down, by the way, on my page.
Well, I mean,
give me something.
I mean,
give me something.
I can give you
not like, oh, they wasted money and bought a Lamborghini. No, like something like.
I mean, I think this is actually a more like less about being wasteful and like crazy spending stuff, but one of the most shocking things that I've seen and learned through advanced financial planning, some of the things that you can do with your money that will kind of blow your mind is if you have a ton of gains in investments. Like let's say somebody had Nvidia right now is like a super hot stock, crazy growth, right? People will become millionaires overnight. Now the problem is that they're going to be taxed on those gains, right? Their cost basis is really low. Now the IRS has a loophole for estate planning, which is you get what's called a step up in cost basis when you inherit money. So if somebody had millions and millions of dollars, even though their cost basis might be $10 and all that's gains, the moment that it gets passed down to a beneficiary, their cost basis comes up to whatever the fair market value is when they inherit that money. So what I've seen happen is somebody has a ton of gains. They also have a parent who is on their way out, close to the end of their life. And what they've done is gifted their brokerage account over to their parents and set themselves up as the beneficiary. And then when the parent passes away, no sales on the stock, right? So when the parent passes away, now all of a sudden their cost basis levels up to the fair market value and they've circumvented all of the taxes, all of the capital gains on that massive growth.
Holy moly. And I think, by the way, that's another thing that people really, really miss and why everyone should speak to an independent financial advisor and why the people doing the things that you are working virtually, cutting out some of the costs, making it accessible to everybody. And we'll put your information obviously in the description. But the reason why is because people don't understand these small tweaks. Obviously, that's a huge, what you're describing is a huge lift. But how many people bought the stock at 5, overnight it skyrockets to 100, and they sell it, and they're like, "Where's all the money?"
Exactly.
Right. Or worse, they sell it, it's in their account, they spend the money, tax time comes around, and kaboom. When, like, again, nobody's saying that you shouldn't buy a stock at 5 that goes to 100. Obviously, that's the dream. That's how the investment world runs, right? Everybody wants it to move that way. But you have to know then when you spend it, what the ramifications are, what the best way to handle it is. I mean, we deal with people all the time that end up, parlaying a lot of that into charitable donations because charities don't pay the gains. And you see when you gift it, the gain is not realized. And you see people who obviously, it's different than retirement, but can make lasting charitable impacts that they never thought they could to the tune of exponentially more than they could if they spent it themselves. And that may not be for everybody. Obviously, you shouldn't live on the street or not be able to afford groceries to help a charity. But there are people who say, like, what am I going to do? But they don't realize that they really have all this. So I think the most important thing is that and I say this to all the listeners, like, everybody should realize that people like Michael are available and everybody can attain them and everybody can make a plan. That doesn't mean that life always goes to plan, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the plan is realizing that eventually over the course of 20, 30, 40 years, something is going to go awry, and you also plan in and risk manage against that.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the real mission of retire.us, is to open up access to this level of financial planning. This is just one example of a strategy. There's so many of these different tax strategies and loopholes and different just subtle nuanced things that if you are conscious of it, it can make a massive difference in your life financially. And you don't need to make any more additional money for that impact to be felt. It's just understanding how to navigate and play the game. Like, this is a big game, right? The IRS exists, sure, but the laws were all written by people that understand the tax code and use it to their benefit, right? Like, the rules weren't written so that all of a sudden everybody feels like the IRS is in our pocket. The rules were written so that if you study the playbook, you can circumvent or find loopholes or find ways around to navigate in a very legal way to end up with more in your pocket versus going to Uncle Sam. And like, these independent fiduciary professionals are the ones that really work in this space. The issue is most people can't access them traditionally because of either asset minimums, $500,000, $1 million to work with them, or giant flat fee retainers, talking 5, 10, 15 grand a year out of pocket, kind of like an attorney. And so we built retire.us to change that in a dramatic way. So a simple subscription model, as little as $40 a month, you can start to work with these level of professionals without any asset minimums and without the high retainer fees, like we said earlier. So anybody can build a clear path to financial freedom with a trusted expert.
I love that. Michael, as you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote. And with that, I will say thank you again, Michael Scarpati, for being here. Thank you for sharing the insight. Thank you for going deep with us and inspiring my hustle. And the floor is yours.
I looked up the quote that I was butchering earlier because this is a good one. And I'm going to go with this. So, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That to me is such a powerful quote, because it is the crux of the human experience, especially with money, that these habits dictate our success. And we will sit here and say, the universe is against me, but it's just because we have unconscious patterns that we haven't brought to the surface. The moment that we start to become conscious of how this game works, the fact that we're in a game, we're playing a game right now, and if you can understand the rules, you can navigate them to put things in your favor.
I absolutely love that. And I have nothing else to say other than this has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.